All right, so I'd like to call to order the April 7th meeting of the Regional School Committee, as we have a quorum. I'm sure we'll have our last two members. Nope, that wasn't it. Was not they? All right, let's start off with community comments. Ms. Rogers, would you like to?
Yes, I would actually. I have something to read, and it might make sense to give everybody something before or after.
Go for it.
Okay.
Whatever you find best. And then, as standard, we'll try and keep community comments to 3-4 minutes.
Yes. No,
Okay, perfect.
Be under that, I promise.
Okay.
Thanks, Kat.
Yeah.
Thank you. So you want to leave one or two here in case
Oh,
this
yes.
I'm here. Okay,
Great, thank you.
Thank you. So as you can see, thank you. I have one left for me. I wanted to talk this evening and take less than 3 minutes to talk about Wi-Fi in school. I have a request. I would like to have the school board or the school measure and monitor radiation levels in classrooms and other areas on school campus with a view to keeping and increasing wired, not wireless connections. Wi-Fi radiation has never been evaluated for its long-term impact on the developing brain. Low-level radiation, i.e. Wi-Fi, has been shown to alter cells and DNA, affect sperm and egg health, and it affects blood. I am concerned that children at school may already have symptoms associated with low-level radiation from Wi-Fi and other devices. They include headaches, nausea, poor sleep or interrupted sleep, skin rashes, hyperactivity, and lack of focus. And I'm sure we can all think of at least one child that has one of those symptoms. At Dover-Sherborn, after 10 years at school, children will be subject to 12,000 hours of low-emitting radiation. The World Health Organization classifies wireless radiation as a Class 2B possible carcinogen, along with DDT and lead paint. It's meant to be avoided. Please keep in mind, France very recently has entirely banned Wi-Fi in daycare and nursery schools, and it has restricted it in elementary schools. Switzerland schools are hardwired. Germany, in particular schools in Frankfurt, Bavaria and Salzburg, are all favour cabled networks. The United Teachers Federation in New York City recently hosted a webinar called Risks of Wireless Technologies Protecting Children, Staff and Schools. Dover-Sherborn should use Ethernet. Why? Speed. Wireless is often slower. Security. Wireless systems are easily hacked. Reliability. Connections with wireless can be lost. Capacity. There's more bandwidth with Ethernet. And cost. Wireless must be continuously upgraded. Just last month, Lloyd's of London, the insurer who has set the world standard for insurance and who's followed by many, stated that all policies henceforth, they will not cover any health-related claims associated with radiation from any wireless device, including Wi-Fi. This is significant. So, I request the Regional School Board measure and monitor radiation levels in classrooms and at school and on school grounds, with parents included in the search for the right entity to measure. Let's reduce the use of Wi-Fi by adding more hardwired connections. Let's have our technology, but do it safely. Let's be forward-thinking and progressive like the school that Dover-Sherborn is. Thank you for your time. My name is Karen Rogers. I'm from Sherborn. And there's just there are a myriad of links. I just put a couple down there. Please take a look. And last note is the 2 photographs on the bottom. One photograph, the first one, is blood under microscope, normal. The next image, quite disturbing is after exposure. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
You're welcome.
And thank you for your comments. We obviously always encourage our community to come out and speak to what is important to them. And then any future agenda items will come from the school committee. But definitely know that this is a topic that is relevant to all three school committees.
Yes.
So any further discussion would probably be a collective discussion and not just a regional school committee discussion. But thank you for your comments.
Lovely. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Okay, any other community comments? Wonderful. All right, so we will move on to our student. Catherine, I guess you get to go first.
Yay. Okay, so I need to pull up my list. Okay, so as Mrs. Wait, actually, I'll get to that later. First, I'm going to start off with just something that's more recent, which is fourth quarter. So that has just started up. And so third quarter ended, and fourth quarter is kind of like the seniors. It's their last, they're leaving soon, and so they're going on their senior projects, which is exciting, and they get to have like experience in different fields outside of school and come back for their AP classes. So that's exciting. And as Mrs. Graham was just asking me about, she was asking me about prom, and so that's a new starting up. People are doing promposals. So they're big. I feel like they get bigger every year, but yeah, those are happening, and the prom is in May, and it's May 15th. And then also as a junior, I know that I just recently got a schedule, and it has a new, like, instead of a DR, I now have a junior meeting with guidance. So that's kind of integrating the college process and like kind of starting that off. Kind of scary, but I guess have to do it. And yeah, and then SAT scores came in from March, which I think is I think most people take the SAT at that point, and there's 2 others in May and June. I think most people take subject tests in June. And yes. Oh, also for student council, this Friday there's April Antics, which is kind of like a break for students because we haven't had, actually I guess we just had Easter weekend break, but it's just kind of a fun assembly to have all the grades there with some bonding activities and some fun things just to get a break from the very hard work that we do at school. So yeah.
Great, thanks. Mr. Smith, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, certainly. So thank you, Catherine. Just wanted to point out in your package just a couple of pieces of student recognition. Mark Seisler and Grant Gregory recently received their Eagle Scout status, which was fantastic. I know that Mr. Bliss spoke on behalf of Grant, and Casey Potts spoke on behalf of Mark, 2 incredibly impressive young men for what they've done. And what was great too is each of their projects were designed to support our communities. Mark designed some signage for our campus, regional campus, and Grant worked on a beautification project on the fire lane access road at Pine Hill. So that was fantastic. It was a great turnout. And one of the things I think that I was most proud of was the fact that so many students also came that day to support their colleagues, which I thought was just wonderful. And then finally, just last week, we found out Michelle Alessandro was named the MIAA Community Service Award winner for individuals. And as you can see in the packet, they only choose 1 individual, 1 team, and then 1 organization. So it's quite an honor. She's going to be recognized at Northeastern University next week with her family. I'll be in attendance, as will Mr. Rollins. Michelle has done wonderful things with her community service. And really all 3 of these students really speak to the pride that we have in citizenship and what it means to have great character, to be a good person, well beyond just their academic workload. So just 3 students to highlight some really great things happening. And then I do want to mention that this Friday we have Acapalooza, thank you. And with Acapalooza, we have 3 high schools and 2 colleges will be participating in performing Friday night here in Mudge Auditorium. Looking forward to that show, and I know that our a cappella group is really excited to perform and have the chance to showcase their talent, but then also we'll get to see a couple college level a cappella groups too. So it's going to
All right, I guess playing the part of Jeb Shute tonight, we have Scott Kelly.
I will not reach his level. He apologizes for not being able to make it, but I will do my best to stand in. Just quickly, the artwork this month is from Miss Semino's sixth graders. Students were inspired by the stylized art of Native Americans to create the colorful reduction prints displayed here. They did a fantastic job using the challenging process of reduction printing to create these works. Here at the middle school, we're in the quite a busy week. We started off last Thursday with the long comp for our seventh graders. They worked very diligently. We had 2 students who were still writing when the buses pulled out. So it was our student put in good effort. They today took the first round of the ELA MCAS, and they will do the second round on Thursday to make up the long compass tomorrow. On Thursday evening, we have a high school, middle school band jazz spectrum concert. In addition to that, we have a transition meeting with parents of rising 6th graders up in our choral room. Mr. Maringer went today to Pine Hill to speak to the 5th grade students, and tomorrow he will travel to Chickering to speak with them. A few other things to point out in our monthly report was our math team traveled to Wentworth Institute in early March, and Angelina Zhang, John Judy, Grace Kwan, and Ashley Drum traveled and did very well. They finished 18th in the state. In addition, Angelina Zhang scored in the top 25%. Also, Patrick Foster represented us in the state geography B, and he did a very nice job answering 5 of the 8 questions in the preliminary roundup. Did not advance, but represented us very well. Our talent show is March 27th, and we thank Amy Derry and Kim McIntosh for making that happen. And finally, Ben Hudson Walker joined the Massachusetts Eastern Junior District Festival Chorus. And that is.
I would just want to say 2 things. One is under the music report, you mentioned that the chorus is exploring Norwegian yoik music, which I haven't heard anything about. I did a little exploring on YouTube. It's really cool stuff. The other is under the science report, you mentioned some high school students that done some teaching at the middle school, which is just spectacular. I mean, I wasn't there, but it's a spectacular thing to do. The more you guys can do it, the better.
I agree. And we have some outstanding students in the high school to be able to bring their talents to our schools and show what doing the right thing in the classroom can lead to. It's just amazing.
I think you did pretty well for Jeff. Congratulations.
I have to say, he does a better job.
All right, any other questions for our 2 headmasters? No. All right, Catherine, you're welcome to stay or welcome to go do homework as usual.
I actually have to dance tonight.
Or dance, or go dance, there you go. All right, thanks, Catherine.
Thank you.
Catherine.
All right, moving on, central office, Mr. Bliss.
Thank you, Ms. White. Members of the Regional School Committee, good evening. Included in the report is an item on the fields at Sherborn. It's a proposed 40B project. We provided some information for you in the packet related not only to this specific project, which is proposed to be developed off of Washington Street near the Holliston line. There was a zoning board meeting on March 12th, and the zoning board meets again on April 29th. We were contacted because the Sherborn Board of Selectmen seek comments from the school committees and other town committees and boards in terms of your position and feeling on this project. So they had outreach through Jeannie Guthrie to me a few weeks ago, And we provided some information as best we know it about the proposed project. We included a map of the proposed 40B project. And I also reached out to Jody Kablak. She's the Director of Planning and Community Development in Sudbury, because Sudbury has built some 40B projects recently. And Jody was incredibly accommodating in providing some information for your review, for our collective review, in terms of the, as best they can discern, the financial impact and the impact on the schools in Sudbury of the developments that they've recently erected. So, Michael, you're probably the resident expert on 40B.
Lucky you.
So on this particular project, I don't know if you, I think ultimately they're providing the regional school committee and the Sherborn school committee an opportunity to opine on your position, and I don't know if the committee has a collective position on this proposed project, but I know Michael's done some analysis on 40Bs in general. Is that fair to say?
No, I think that's a little bit of an extension. I'd read the plan for this project, but nothing
Oh, okay.
beyond that.
I ask a question. I mean, I don't think we have a collective opinion because obviously we discussed it. But more to the point, I don't feel as though I have the tools to do a kind of analysis that would allow me to make an informed opinion. But I'd be interested to hear anyone's thoughts on this on the impact from Sudbury. Because I don't quite know how to, whenever you hear one opinion, you say, well, who thinks otherwise and why do they think that this one wasn't? Chris?
Well, I did read the report, and on paper, it makes financial sense, it absolutely does. Especially in a declining enrollment environment. But it's not just the financial implications. There are other services provided as a result to any type of development. But on paper, again, I would say it does look like it makes sense, given the assumptions hold.
What Sudbury did is the town of Sudbury contracted with a firm that did a complete analysis on, it was beyond a feasibility. It was really kind of an impact study for the schools and for the town in general. And I'm not sure if, I can certainly find out for the regional school committee if the town of Sherborn intends to engage a firm, because that might provide exactly the kind of momentum or the horsepower.
So our reply to them would be, as you get more information and.
We'd be happy to.
But I think that the town in its own right has fairly limited bases to putting up opposition to any project that comes forward under the 40B development structure. What I was interested in was because Sudbury had developed or had these types of developments of this type of 2 and 3 bedroom units, what did they experience? And it looks like they experienced on average about one half of an enrolled student per unit developed. So from that standpoint, I don't think there's a lot that we can say one way or the other, and we certainly can't, opine on how it will impact the neighbors of that development. Right. But I don't think from a planning standpoint what's being proposed causes anything for us to be concerned that it would have a negative impact on the schools. And I think that's as best we can go, and could possibly help a town like Sherborn get more of a balance of housing units from not being dominated by 4 and 5 bedroom homes. But I was glad to see that this number was at least their history in Sudbury, and I don't think why there would be reason for Sherborn not to, in a sense, be attracting the same mix of people who are interested in townhouses.
I'm happy to reach out to Jeannie and just let her know that it came up for discussion. I think they just wanted to, make sure it was sort of on the radar, and see if they have in fact engaged a firm to do sort of a more longitudinal study, then that'd be interesting information to look at.
Agreed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. In terms of other items on the report, we just really want to go out publicly and thank the DS Boosters under the title DS Boosters to the Rescue. Thank you for the up to $1,000 per team that was generously offered to afford teams the opportunity to have some indoor practice time because of the tardy melting schedule. That was a huge help, so we want to thank the boosters for that support. And we included the results from the Destination Imagination. We had a number of teams that advanced. We had a total of 12 teams. 5 ultimately placed in their respective categories and advanced to the state competition on March 28th. And then we had 2 teams from representing Pine Hill that scored sufficiently at states and now are moving on to the global competition that will take place in Knoxville, Tennessee in May. So we're in the process of crafting congratulatory letters to go to all Destination Imagination participants.
Are these organized through the schools, or are they organized outside the schools?
Really
After
simple.
school.
Nothing school activities.
Now, it used to be just parents pulling teams together, now it's an organized process where you can fill out, the PTO puts out a form that the parents can fill out, and then it's after school.
But they're not hours, they're
No,
communities.
yes,
On the MECO program, there have been a number of meetings between the superintendents and MECO directors to try and work on, better unification and stronger sense of community among the member districts. But I think the item to point out is that I actually have a meeting next week with the president of Needham Bank, who has reached out through the senior vice president of the bank and would like to discuss some possible donation to help offset the recent reduction to the MECO program. So I look forward to meeting with Jack and Eric on that topic next week. That should be interesting. We also provide an update on NEASC and provided some information there in terms of some of the steps that are being made to, at least NEASC believes, improve the self-study process. And a total of 10 schools are participating in this pilot, using some of the crosswalks and the web-based tool and whatnot. We included the crosswalks for you in last month's packet. So we are sort of on the proverbial sidelines waiting to, is that fair to say, Mr. Smith?
That is fair.
Yeah, to see the impact of these initiatives in terms of the self-study process. So at least the communication is up and running, and we seem to be in good stead there. In terms of the state aid, we should know more this coming week, I think, right, Christine? Like April 15th, we're expecting some more information next week and potentially as early as next week. But certainly we provided in the packet an update on sort of where the region stands in terms of the preliminary cherry sheet analysis. So that's included in your packet. There is an effort to level fund regional transportation for fiscal year 16's budget, keeping in mind that that does not mean that every region will get its same apportionment in 16 as it did in 15. So therefore, we are projected at the region to actually receive almost $19,000 less in fiscal 16 than we did in 15, although the state's proposing to level fund that in its aggregate. Mars is taking a stand on that and is hoping to not only see that map, but hoping to see the entire regional transportation allocation increase for next year. So those are the highlights. Any questions, Richard?
I have a couple. The first one was about the assessment study update.
Yes.
And I confess, I didn't understand what I was reading, because I didn't know what constituted an assessment. What are these?
So this could be MCAS or NAEP testing.
Well, so this is, if you like, extramurally supplied assessments.
Yeah.
The whole range of them.
Yes.
I'll go back and read the study. Whoever drafted this, and I know it wasn't somebody in the House, really needed to define the terms.
Yeah.
At least people like me could understand what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. The second is this, once again, we have this Metro West adolescent health survey, which I find extraordinarily rich every time it shows up. It's really, assuming the data are good, which I think they are, an extraordinary snapshot of what's happening among the kids, in some good ways and in some obviously quite troubling ways. And I would make 2 comments. One is, it's unfortunate that this survey doesn't include healthy behaviors, if you will, because it would be nice to see on the other side, how many kids are doing X, Y, and Z that are actually good for their health and good for their well-being and so forth. And I don't know whether we have any way to track that as well.
Well, that's interesting, Richard, because that touches on that whole social norming
Right.
Yeah,
side.
I
of
think
it.
exactly.
A lot of times they just assume the compliment,
Yeah, no,
so,
but, and that's not what I mean. I mean,
Right.
it is nice that, yes, you
right,
can
the
do,
social norming
do the subtraction
campaign
from 100% and say, hey,
focuses
70%
on,
of our kids
right,
are not.
are not,
But that's,
exactly.
but I'm interested in as well the positive aspects of behavior, whether it's, daily exercise or, meditation or, serving people who are less.
Right. There's
privileged
one
than others.
question
There
on
there
there.
was exercise, there was.
Yeah, there's one question on exercise.
Yeah, okay, you're right. there is
That
one.
we see the result. There may be more questions
That's true.
asked.
But, so that's one comment, but the thing I think that strikes me is that we now have a number of years data running. And to the extent that you can, draw, straight lines or lines from, between 3 points, most of these things are not trending in a particularly favorable direction. They're not necessarily trending in a bad direction, but they're not trending in a favorable direction. And
Some are.
Some are bullying's gone down, Richard.
Smoking's gone
Okay.
down.
Yeah.
well, all right, I'll take it all back. No, I don't.
But you're right, some are
Some
level,
are.
some are
Some
level
are.
and
Can we
some.
give you a ruler?
Yeah, exactly. I guess what I'm interested in is obviously not tonight and not necessarily even this year, but some kind of a mapping of these results onto our efforts, and whether guidance, for instance, thinks that these results are a fair metric of the success of their efforts. Having said that, I don't think that it's necessarily the case that guidance efforts would make those numbers go down. It may be that guidance efforts simply keep them level, and they're doing a bang-up job. But it would be nice to hear a discussion of how those efforts relate to the kinds of things that are coming up in here. Because clearly there are some very troubling things. You look at the number of kids who contemplate suicide, the number of kids who feel extremely stressed over very long periods of time. Those things are really troubling, and it would be nice to, to find out whether we need to be doing, taking a different approach.
In the past, had we been provided this report with also comparisons to the average? In the average of the communities being surveyed? Because that was the part that I felt, again, we have 3 points, so we are starting to get a little bit of longitudinal, but it's the overall culture that our students are growing up in, and we may find out that we're doing good by holding steady if the overall trend is for adverse behaviors in this age group.
There's
So
another report expected in May,
Okay.
so that's sort of phase 2 of everything, so we haven't not yet seen that. So we received our key indicators report, and then I think that provides probably districts the opportunity to say, if there's something glaringly wrong, that something could be changed before the regional results.
Okay, so we do get the
Yeah.
comparative.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought we'd seen that in the
No,
past.
that's a good point. And Richard, that is a good point. It would be interesting for guidance, even just some kind of even a very concise kind of executive summary of does it synthesize. I know that SPAN DS would and does look at this because this informs the grant writing, particularly for the Metro West Health Foundation grant, which largely supports the social norming campaign. If we didn't have this level of data, we wouldn't be a contender for that grant.
Right. And to SPAN's credit, I would posit that all of the work that they're doing has something to do with at least the top section of these, the substance abuse sections, that a number of them are going down and not going up, which is, I think, a testament to, and it's hard to just pick correlation, but there has to be some benefit coming out of what they've been doing.
Absolutely. Just what if I may also, I think another piece that we need to look at that may tie into Mr. Robinson's point will be the challenge success program.
Right.
Especially when we look at issues such as health and well-being and stress, and a number of factors, because sometimes the correlation that is when students are feeling that way, if they are feeling stressed or overwhelmed, what do they do? Some cope well, some do not, some make choices with things that they shouldn't. So I think that'll be another piece.
Do we know if challenge success and or SPAN will be resurveying more frequently than once every 2 years to help them inform?
What we have been doing is, we will be surveying students again with challenge success at the end of this year. We alternate the years with the Metro West and the
Do we use
challenge success.
the questions in a similar format so that the data is as comparable from year to year as on the longitudinal?
Well, some do, but
I'm not
correct.
saying everything on the
Right.
survey, but at least the key ones around
Yes.
stress, suicide, and some of the drug usage, I think, because if you don't have a consistency in how you phrase the question, it could reduce its ability to make the comparisons between survey instruments.
Right, and each of those instruments really are administered and controlled by a third party. So we've got Metro West has theirs. We obviously have input on that. We can submit questions, we can give feedback on questions. We can with the other two, but I think the Metro West is the one area where right now we have a lot more say in the questions. Challenge Success has their,
Oh, so they
Basis.
have their own?
Yes, they
Oh,
do.
okay,
Yes,
I
they
didn't
have their
realize that
own,
they have-
and
that
then
comes
the
with
social
package.
norming has their
Got
own.
it. Okay.
So it was also interesting to note, and it reaffirms sort of year after year after year, that by grade, it tells a different story. And that's where I think that guidance interpretation of the data, because as, most people talk about, each class sometimes has its own chemistry and its own makeup. And so in one year, a ninth grade may behave in a certain way, and then the next ninth grade class, maybe not so much.
That's a good reason, Claire, why it's a incredibly valid point, and one where I think if guidance does, very succinct
Yeah.
kind of summary, it would be nice to have that accompany as a to memorialize the document, so that, a few years down the road, you can look back and say, well, here's what, at least at that
Right.
time, here was guidance counsel's interpretation of why they may have been, because there could be something that.
Right, or the
happens
footnotes to say, okay, so the senior class,
Right.
when they were sophomores, Spandias started. When they were seniors, Challenge Success started. So that as we go forward, we
Right.
begin to see, not necessarily, because that's not the right way to measure the benefit of that, but
But they're good dipsticks in terms
to
of.
see
yeah.
what's happening, as well as is the trends that we've had that have been by grade, once you reach 11th and 12th, certain criteria are sort of met or show in the survey. Does that change over time? Instead of 40% of the class has tried alcohol by the time they graduate, in 4 or 5 years, is that a different number because of some of the work that's gone on here at the school?
Thank you.
Anything else?
No.
All right, any other questions of Steve?
On the,
I don't think we're there yet.
the grade estimate that
No,
was
that's
mentioned.
financial.
Oh, we can
Oh,
take that.
reference.
Oh, no,
Oh, you
that
want
one's
that now?
not.
I thought we were, okay,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I thought we were gonna wait for Chris' part, go ahead.
We can.
Well, she referenced it, so I wasn't.
Okay.
So in the governor's budget, are they proposing a change in the amount that schools pay and/or receive related to school choice?
I don't believe
It's
that.
based on the actual school choice, the number of students.
It's in the dollar value.
But we budgeted 13,400, and the budget proposal says 26,800 as a charge to us.
Right. It's based on, when they did the budget last year, or when they did the budget, they were anticipating maybe 2 students to choice out. The actual numbers right now anticipated are 3 students, and that's why you have the increase. It's an estimate of the number of students that are opting out.
Isn't it, I thought it was 5,000 per
I'm just
student, is that
using,
not the?
No, I think that actually has gone up.
yeah, it
Michael.
has.
I think
Oh,
it's, yeah, no, I think it's more, it's 67, I think,
Yeah.
something like that, it's over 6,000.
It is student driven though.
Well, so, but we're now at 4 students, not at 2 that we used in our budget.
Any other questions? All right. Dr. Liddy, your turn.
Thank you. The educator evaluation of qualified peer service is one of the most enriching portions of my day as I go over and watch as these 22 educators come together with the two facilitators from Teachers 21 to talk about establishing the coaching relationship with a colleague, observing instruction, critical components of not only their own practice, but what they'll see in the others. It's amazing. And what we're doing is we're taking the books that they are reading, the hard coaching, the resource and protocol book, and we're going to read those as part of our administrative cabinet, so that we have the same language, the same, not the exact same experience, but that opportunity to understand what our educators are going through. It's amazing. Additionally, the DS has been selected by the DESE to pilot the educator administrative surveys. Those are underway. A lot of upfront work on the part of Anthony Ritaco, uploading the data, and myself coordinating that effort across our 4 schools, but we'll get some great perspectives about the DESE educator survey from Panorama and the tripod surgery, so we can make an informed decision about what we'll be doing going forward. Remembering that all of the results of these surveys are kept confidential to those people who are piloting them for us. In the future, they will become public. The Wellness Committee Implementation Subgroup met on April 27th. We talked about the implementation guidelines of the wellness policy, which is nutrition, the social and emotional health, which will include the guidance counseling, nursing services, and physical activity. We'll meet again on April 27th to come forward. All of this information is going to be captured so we can post it on the website, so we know what do we believe about wellness in the Dover-Sherborn public schools and what is actually in place. And that leads nicely to food service. Under the direction of Janelle Madden, the food service staff members have been undergoing professional development during the early release day. And you see a blog that was posted from the Stalker Institute where our food service people got together and did some fruits and vegetables and fruits workshop. It was amazing. You saw the pictures. They've been blogging, they've been posting to e-blasts. I think we've come up a notch about what's happening in food service, some of the grab and go meals. And what's really, they're meeting again tomorrow, which is really cool. And the best part, talk about challenge success as a global effort. Tomorrow, all of our educators will come together for wellness, professional development opportunity. And Ms. Christine Guthrie of Spark Kindness will come and talk to all of our educators for an hour about how we take care of ourselves as educators in order to be able to care for our students. You're all welcome to come. And then after that, the wellness committee, the wellness educators and the nurses are facilitating sessions on yoga, meditation, mindfulness, so really rejuvenating the educator's soul in order to be able to also meet the challenge, success, and stress of being an educator. So it's a great opportunity for us. And I thank the nurses for leading that charge. They really came forward and said this is something that's very important for us to do under the guidance of Carolyn Genitazio as our nurse leader. And we did several times and put this together, so I appreciate their efforts. Well, Diana Papadopoulos has been out there doing some great professional development on the world stage in my mind. She actually did for EdTech Teacher and MassQ digital tools for project-based lessons to support student learning. And then she worked with our new educators and a mentor just on the capacity of Google and the Google Apps and Google presentation. It was just amazing what she was able to do in a short period of time.
Excellent. Thanks, Karen. All right.
We don't have Terry Green with us this evening. She'll be joining us for next week's joint school committee meeting. And she looks forward to providing at that meeting a sort of 1 year in review on special ed reorg, which will be wonderful. But she's pretty excited about compiling the 134 responses from the special ed survey around the reorg. And she is compiling that by building to more carefully refine the data, and she looks forward to sharing that out at the May meetings. Thank you.
Excellent. All right.
Chris?
Chris.
Oh, if we can just get some exciting news, first of all. Karen is a new grandmother.
Oh,
this morning.
Congratulations so much.
so much. Juliet Marie was born last evening at 9.
Yeah. Wow.
So that's exciting.
Yes. Awesome.
Well, thank you. And Chris returned from Key West early this morning. So she's really thrilled to be back with us this evening. Right?
Welcome
I'm
back.
still on island time.
So welcome back. You're looking fresh
Yes, I am.
Fresh.
For now.
for now.
The good news is now we've finished the third quarter for the fiscal year and we're rounding the last quarter. This is when we really start to hone in on where we're coming in for E&D. And again, it's preliminary and we are conservative at this stage. We're estimating right now an E&D of 3.5% of budget. We're still evaluating the revenues. We'll know more once we see the last quarter of the spring sports, once that all gets booked. Because if we have any shortfalls, that's gonna actually affect the E&D. As far as the facilities is concerned, we did have an issue with a light pole. We were reimbursed, and the insurance company would go after the insured party. As far as one of the concerns we're having is the facilities reserve for HVAC units on both the middle and high school. They're nearing their second year, 10-year cycle. We've spent, I think I previously reported $45,000, but we had to do an adjustment because some of the emergency repairs were going to contracted services, and we really want to keep an eye on that. So we made that adjustment. We spent $88,000 basically on replacement parts for the HVAC systems. The good news is some of that's in the capital plan. So I think I have a meeting scheduled, myself and Ralph, to sit down with this individual who is the contractor, go over the inspection reports and, you know, what in effect was replaced. I mean, we have an idea, but in detail, so we can then correlate that to the capital plan and pull things out that we may not need to do on a go-forward basis.
Excuse me, Chris, I'm sorry, it's probably were these expenditures mainly repairs of things that had already failed, or were they preventative maintenance, or?
A combination. Our previous contractor, from what I understand, they do a general inspection at the beginning of the year and they clean the filters and do all of that. That's what our contract is for. But then they may see failing parts or they may see preventative maintenance that is necessary. But in this case, most of this was actual equipment failure. So that's why I'm thinking we can pull some of that out of the capital plan.
That doesn't imply anything more serious, it's just that things failed earlier than they were expected to fail. It's not.
Correct. Like the capital plan, I think, has amounts scheduled from 2017 to 2022. 2022.
Right.
Over that period. And it might be like 40,000 here, 50,000 there. So I think it's anticipated, but it fails sooner.
Okay.
And I think the winter also had to play out some of this, the winter months we've had. Unfortunately, the wastewater treatment, I can't name it after me now, failed in February, but we really think it was as a result of the cold winter. And DEP even concurred with us on that. I don't have the results yet for March, but as soon as I do, I'll pass them along to Steve and he can send an email out. I'm hoping it's positive. I'd like to turn you to the capital project status report. It's a schedule that was in there. It's an update of where we sit with all capital projects, what's been completed to date, and what's remaining in those specific accounts. Basically, the only project left or remaining is the masonry project, which the budget was $12,000, and the estimate is expected to come exactly at $12,000. The Linkers Common doors and the high school walls and doors, the budget for that was approximately $64,000. We actually got a cost estimate of $84,357 just to do the Linkers doors and not the high school doors. upon further analysis of why the capital plan was off so much compared to our estimates, the only and obviously the person that consulted with us on that report is no longer with the company. But once we really dug into it, we really think they didn't anticipate the masonry work that goes into these doors, and they costed out the doors, and that's it. There is a lot more labor because of that masonry walls and the attachments. Plus, it didn't include the locks, and it didn't include the hardware.
Does it include, Chris, all the framing of all the doors,
It
or
did
is it just
the frames, but not they've got to tear those frames out,
Right.
which involves concrete,
Mm.
okay? And I don't think they anticipated the cost of that installation.
Makes sense.
And obviously we're going to have to put that out to bid if it's that type of cost. What we're recommending is we have some project money left over in the upper tier, as you can see. We have approximately $21,000 in 4 projects, of which the biggest piece is 5 in each project, approximately 5,000. We're saying if we use that, in effect, we could still do the Linkless, the project, Linkless Common Doors. The high school would have to be deferred out, and we'd have a remaining balance of $1,300. That would be our recommendation to the school committee, myself and Mr. Kelly and the administration. Would you concur, Steve?
Yeah, I think the biggest concern is how this money is actually voted, and whether we have the latitude to be able to spend the residual money that was earmarked, as it were. See, we originally asked for $315,000 for fiscal year 15, right, for all the projects. And the question, I think, the remaining question becomes, can we repurpose money that wasn't spent on one particular project
Part of
for?
the project.
Right.
For another
See, in
part
the
in the
past,
warrant
And importantly, for another project that was approved in that year.
Right,
I think it's really
That's-
important.
That's
It's
important.
that's the
not-
key,
It's not
right.
another project that we're gonna pull forward. It was already one of the 5 projects agreed to as part of the warrant.
And in the past, this wasn't an issue because this is the first year of the IMA.
Right.
Okay, and it's a cash transaction. I am going to bring, have discussions, Steve and I discussed with Rick Manley.
Yeah.
To see if we have the ability to do this within the way the motion and the article was written for the town of Dover.
Weren't they the same articles?
They're worded differently,
But we're
Michael,
in
from
the two
town
right
to
in the
town.
books.
For this year, Michael, because the Sherborn Borough and Dover for fiscal 15 paid cash.
So one of the parts is, so Sherborn borrowed and advanced that.
But they borrowed for various building improvement needs.
Which
Yes.
is how
That's the
we've
key.
usually done
Yeah.
it in the past, which is
Oh.
why when there was money left over in a warrant article, we could then use it for later building projects.
So in this
Remember that,
year,
Richard?
Yeah, we've done that.
and this year, their intent is to use free cash. Are we worded, how are they wording that, since it's no
Sherborn isn't
longer?
the issue.
No, but I'm just saying, I'm anticipating, if the
Even more
free cash.
specifically.
Yeah, which is,
Yeah.
really ties our hands.
So
Yep.
that's, so
But
the-
let's,
rolling forward.
right, but
would
let's
be,
figure out
oh,
15 first. Fiscal
Right, so there might be a
15
lesson
first.
in 15 that will apply to 17.
Correct. Because 16's already out the door.
So I'd like to have some
Yeah,
answers
right.
by the next meeting, the May meeting. Because if we can go forward with this project, we'd like to get it done in the summer months.
Right.
But at the end of the day, what number was voted on? Or was it the whole number or was it piecemeal numbers?
Well, the problem is that the number was voted, but in the blue books, it was a list of projects with dollar figures
But
with
in
them.
the end though, what did we vote on?
That's
Did we
what
vote
Rick
on-
Manley
so
needs to
that's what-
opine on.
We
okay.
need.
Yeah, exactly.
Because as long as the difference is if we voted 315 as one vote,
Correct,
then, but
We being the
Exactly.
town of Dover.
correct.
And I think it is still
You're voting on
one lump sum in
I agree.
Sherborn that they're choosing to do.
Correct.
I'm hoping that Mr. Manley concurs with us. On that though, if I have his determination, can we just go ahead if you send an email out to?
I think what we should probably do is engage Lori and Michael as the capital committee.
Okay.
So maybe what we can do is find out from Rick, he can opine on this aspect, and then maybe we can get more clearer definition around all of the $88,000 worth of all this other stuff. Those would seemingly be two pretty big agenda items to meet
Okay.
Ralph and capital sub, and then capital sub rolls up to region.
So otherwise, we would not be able to embark on all the doors in Lindquist under the current
Correct.
estimates.
Is it, given that we're meeting like every week this month, is it possible that Rick would have
Oh,
an answer and like, so
A
that.
couple days,
Yeah,
since we're
so
back here
that-
next Monday.
next Monday or the Monday after, if there's something to
That's
capital
actually a
to
good
discuss
idea.
with.
Well, if we find out from Rick, I'm just wondering if there would need to be any decision.
No,
of the- It's
because
the way
we're not
we've
changing
operated in the
anything.
past, it's not a
Correct.
change from
Correct.
standard operating procedure. So if we get the yay from the green light from Rick, then we'll certainly consult with Michael and Lori
And
as
you
reps
just
to
inform
council.
us.
And they can just inform us next Monday.
Yeah.
And do you think we should, if Rick says it's okay to move the money, will we be proactively communicating out to the finance committees?
Oh, well, me
Oh,
too.
yeah.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Who, and that would come from Steve or Chris then?
Yeah, from
Yeah.
our offices to town halls.
Yeah, and I
And-
think part of that message, again, really important, this is a project that was already approved
I agree.
and already in there.
But at this, at 50, 60,000 or whatever, that would have gone through the formal bidding process
Right.
anyways.
Mhm.
So there's always the potential that it might get better.
It might get better, it could get worse.
Are we bidding out the full package then, or only a limited amount?
A limited amount, because it's usually time elements. Are you saying bid like the high school? Even though we
Well,
don't
that
have
was
the-
what the original expectation was when we formulated the
Or do you bid the
capital.
whole thing and then decide at that point, once you see the prices, what you can do
Oh, that's
with the
true.
money?
That's what I'm
Could
saying.
have, you also listed subject
I
to.
mean, if they're out here, they're out
Right.
here,
Okay,
It's done.
yeah.
Good point.
and maybe just split them up in components so you can accept A or B or A plus B.
Right.
That's a good idea.
Okay, thank you. And that's it for me.
Okay. All right. So on to our more so we already talked about the fields of Sherburne.
Can I just?
Yeah, sure, of
Oh, the POS, that's under Chris, right, for food service?
I forgot.
So we're changing, do you wanna speak to that?
Oh, yes. I think the school committee already voted that. Oh, yes, we have changed the vendor. We're going to a web-based system. Upon further investigation, with Anthony and the two vendors, Mosaic is the direction of the future. As far as, they don't have all of the functionality that the standalone system would have, but from a cost benefit perspective and also the future capabilities, I think Janelle believes she's willing to forgo a little bit of that, because she knows down the road they will have that ability. And she was very impressed, and so was Anthony.
So- On the front end, what changes will parents and students see? Anything, nothing? There's this all,
I don't think
Okay.
we know that yet
Okay.
in terms of what the actual interface.
That would be something I think we could have Janelle come and give a presentation.
That'd be good.
I'm just thinking of
And
communication.
this is common across all
I
three
was
districts?
gonna say, it sounds like a
Yes.
joint,
All this
joint,
joint meeting.
Very
So
helpful
once-
to Janelle.
Once you get people signed up to pay online as first graders, it will carry them hopefully through graduation.
I think it would be good to have that little demo maybe.
Future joint meeting.
all right, excellent. All right, all right. Girls ice hockey, Mr. Smith.
At the last athletic advisory committee meeting, Coach Grout presented some information on the state of women's ice hockey at Dover-Sherborn. For those of you who don't know, we have a co-op in existence with Hopkinton High School, a very successful co-op. Two schools have had a really positive relationship. The athletes who participated from two schools have really thoroughly enjoyed it. We also had some parents who had children who skate for the hockey program, both from DS as well as from Hopkinton present, and talked about the impact that the women's ice hockey program has had on their daughters. And at that meeting, there was discussion around future enrollment, numbers of participants for that. We do have 5 seniors who are graduating, and it looked as though between Hopkinton and Dover-Sherborn, that we would probably have to do one of two things. Look into co-oping with a third school, which is actually quite common in women's ice hockey, as well as some other sports, or look at potential for 8-3 waivers. The athletic advisory committee at that meeting voted unanimously to pursue the option of a potential co-op with a third community. It could be a number of different communities. One that we will be reaching out to will be Millis High School. Some of the discussions that have come about are the location of where practice is held, what time school gets out, the limited ice time. So there's certainly some constraints, but it was agreed that the administration, the athletic director, and myself would be reaching out to some local communities to see about their potential interest in forming a co-op and just merging a third team into it so that we could in fact continue to have a program.
Great.
That's kind of where
But
we
no
are.
word from Millis yet.
I have reached out to Robert Mullaney. He is interested, but he wants to relay more with his athletic director. But I have started that initial conversation, and we know that the sooner the better because some of these different communities, right now Millis is actually with a 4-town co-op, right?
Medway, Ashland, Holliston, Millis.
Yes. And there's discussion that Millis would be perhaps interested in co-oping with another local school.
And speaking of athletic, Jeff Parcells, our new impending athletic director, sent his regards. He was not well tonight, so he was not able to join us, although he was looking forward to having a chance to meet us and spend time.
Yeah, we hopefully will reschedule that. For
Absolutely. Anytime. Great, thank you. All right, staying with athletics, Mr. Kellett, getting into the athletic discussion.
You have a memo that was sent to Mr. Bliss regarding the potential for middle school sports. And after reaching out and touching base with a bunch of different groups, including Positive, our team leaders, curriculum leaders, coaches, middle school teachers who are also coaches at the high school, for a host of reasons, in large part, the impact it would have on the existing programs in this school, the field space and space that is already at a premium with the high school teams, that just didn't seem to make sense. It also fly, in the opinion of many of the educators, in the face of what we're trying to do with challenge success. And then the final factor was that we have a new athletic director, a new superintendent, to put that added burden on their plate and just doesn't feel right. So it is not my position that we should move forward with it. Having said that, I'm very supportive of athletics and have been of the local teams that need space to wait for a practice, whatever we've been able to work with them, and, storing their equipment, whatever they need, we'll continue to do that. And athletics is a very important part in middle school years. So we are supportive of it, but it's just not the right time, in my opinion, to move forward.
Any questions from you guys? This was
I mean, the memo made a lot of sense about why it looked thoughtfully reviewed, and it seemed like after the review, it made sense that it wasn't the right next step. So
It pained me to come to that conclusion, having my own children that participate in athletics. But there are other options out there. So,
No, I was just gonna say, I mean, the reality is for the kids who really want the competitive, there are plenty of leagues that offer it. It's not like school is the only place these kids who are competitive athletes are doing sport, realistically.
No, but there's some sports where the competition is actually moving to a middle school. So if you take girls field hockey, for example, a lot of public schools are actually moving away from a rec-driven field hockey program, and they are actually coming into the middle school. So our rec program is having a hard time finding competition now because they can't play the school-based programs. So now that's one-off, and that might be over time, you might see a tipping point among schools where that does draw us back into the discussion, but I think it's more sport by sport right now, it's not across all the sports.
So they can play or they're choosing not
No,
to play?
They cannot. So
Because preseason in middle school, we have scrimmages with towns that aren't in our TBL league or
this is
middle
middle school
teams.
programs.
governed by the MIA or, I'm just
It's
wondering who's saying you can't, like who's managing the middle school leagues?
Brian, you, yeah.
The actual school systems do. So I used to teach in Wellesley, and we had some interscholastic sports, and you had to be like another public school to be in that, and the athletic directors almost made a league. So you couldn't just have random youth sports teams that would come in and join. It's really kind of a closed network of schools.
So
Okay, I'll leave that where it is. That sounds like
Besides
athletic
the-
directors
this
making their own
potential-
league.
potential change in field hockey, what was the positive case for this in light of, again, my impression of no lack of, after-school sports opportunities for middle schoolers and elementary school students in this community?
And from my standpoint, I think you do.
What were the
Who
people
were
coming?
the people who were whatever was the inception of this study, what was the pitch being made?
As I understand it, this was initiated by a baseball group that wanted programs. As a whole, I see, there are benefits in the school spirit and the opportunities for kids to compete. There are also drawbacks to that I mentioned in the cuts.
Right, and
I just know nothing
there are
about
some-
this, or a like for like comparison of whether, these independently organized leagues like in girls and boys lacrosse and in Pop Warner football and all the other things, are they comparable to this, or is for some reason the school organized athletic experience substantially better?
I would say that some of the experiences outside of school are far more competitive than you would see at the school level. And there are varying levels.
Yeah.
All club sports have varying levels.
Yeah, there's always that next
Right, and so
tier up.
for instance, I helped with middle school boys hockey at one point. And so that's probably the only time where, all these kids come together and this year it's girls and boys coming together, can play hockey regardless of where, if you were outside the school system, Michael, you'd be on an A-level team or a B-level team or a C-level team, and you may not be able to play together. So it's more about the social and sort of the other parts of middle school rather than the elite athleticism.
So in many of these programs, there's tiering that we didn't see at the girls lacrosse level, which is my
Right, and for high school, obviously, for a high school perspective, it helps to build, I think, some momentum within programming. So if you're building a middle school baseball program, softball program, it's, I thought a couple of the students at the athletic advisory said that, there's that pride in you play for your middle school, you may, then play for your high school with continuity. But certainly, the opportunities exist all over the place for kids. It's just, it is different. It's not just for in this middle school.
So this now becomes our position on middle school sports until we collectively choose to look at it again in the future. Right? So if anybody comes saying, what's our position on middle school sports, this is the position of record.
It becomes our position if we make
As
a
of today.
position. At the moment, we
fair
have
point.
no
Yeah.
program.
I mean, I'm not sure it has to be a school committee, it needs to
I
have
don't,
anything.
I'm just saying
Yeah.
that I would hope then that this is now the answer that administration gives anybody,
Right.
any individuals that come asking this question, because I feel like it has been looked at by administration pretty richly at this point in time. I was using the wrong term in
It's the right,
generalities.
it's the right document to point to.
Right.
The homework has been done.
Correct. I guess that's what I'm trying to say, is I would hope then that this is the answer for the short term, I mean,
Until there's a significant change otherwise, right?
Right.
So
And
something would have to change significant in one of those criteria to really then reopen the door.
So we felt as if there were there were groups that approached us, and we thought to put this through a clear vetting process, it was like we would any team that comes on or offline, any program that comes on or offline.
Right.
We first vet things through AAC. The notion was, let's have the faculty and other stakeholders opine on that. That informed the AAC discussion. AAC further opined. Ultimately, the document was drafted because it came from middle school to me from Mr. Kellett. So the protocols were all checked off, and thank you, Mr. Kellett, and everyone who was involved, and because it seems like we had some pretty rich stakeholders.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.
Great.
Oh, that's
Thank you.
great.
Thank you. All right, staying with the middle school, move on to technology.
Well, I'm going to thank you for the opportunity to share, and I'm going to defer to Mr. Marringer and Mr. Pittman.
And I'm gonna thank you very much for the opportunity as well, and I will be deferring in just a second. So, I appreciate the time to talk to you about, BYOD. I think it's something that, as administrators, Scott and I have heard a lot from teachers. It's really a teacher initiative right now, and I thought the best thing tonight would be to have Kim Phelan, who is an 8th grade social studies teacher, kind of give you the perspective of the teachers and why they're in favor of a BYOD program, and then we wanted to answer some questions that you might have. So, why don't you?
You all have the packet that we sent out. So just to explain why we're interested in BYOD, this would be a pilot program only for the 8th grade. As you all know, when students go to the high school, they can bring their own device. We feel like we face a real shortage in devices here, in the ability to access technology that we want on a regular daily basis. So if you see the YBYOD, this is teaching that we are already doing. It is a tech tool we already have. It would enable us to use it more efficiently and more effectively. It would increase time on task a lot by having students bringing their own device. Currently, we have no way to control which devices students use. So for example, every time a student signs on to a new computer, say they go from social studies to English to science, the login process, the computer has to recognize and set up a profile for that student on each computer. We lose on average 10 minutes or more a class period logging on and logging off the computers. That is a big time loss with a 50-minute period, fifth of your time. It also would increase computer access for students because for every student that brings a device into the school, if they are allowed to by a parent, that's one less student that needs to use a school device. That frees up more devices within the school for other grade levels, other teachers, other students who don't have a device to use. It would definitely simplify use for the kids because they know their own stuff. They know their own technology, they know their own equipment, they have things organized in their own filing systems on their own computer. That's a little challenging for students at the middle school level to manage on devices that are shared by hundreds of other students. We do have 516 students in the school, all sharing the same technology. The other thing is the devices tend to be hogged by certain curriculum departments. My department is one of those that is a very heavy user in social studies and English. And if you look at our device usage, we monopolize this. That really prohibits other departments from using the devices as effectively as they'd like to do. And it also makes it hard for teachers who haven't planned way in advance to sign out the devices for their classrooms. So, and the students would be able to complete more work here at school if they had more time where you don't have to log in, log off, try to get a device problem. So this would align with our technology goals that we already have here at the school of maximizing the use of our technology that we have and making sure that we're differentiating and improving student learning through technology. So in the 9 years that I've been teaching here at Dover-Sherborn, our use of computers has steadily increased all the time. And I have found it is now with Google, the shift to Google that we've had over the past few years, made a tremendous impact on writing of students and my ability to have students writing in the classroom. And the English teachers would definitely echo that statement as well. You're seeing some really great feedback. It makes it a lot more possible for students to do collaborative work together. Feedback, peer editing. I can't tell you how much this is improving student writing from my perspective as a teacher. We also now have online textbooks only for math. The 8th grade students only have an online text. There's a classroom set that is used in the classroom only. We also have all the online textbooks with foreign language. So when you're looking at homework and other things, if they don't have access to a device, it makes it far more challenging for the students to access the curriculum materials, whether it's in help session or DR or in the classroom itself. And as we move forward with education, there are more and more students that need assistive technology. That might be a read aloud on the computer for a child that has difficulty with reading on their own. You know, it might be somebody that's an English language learner. It might be a student that has difficulty with decoding. The assistive technology is available at the click of a button on the computer. So we find that really helpful. As well as with organizational issues, we're really working with a lot more executive function type needs and doing a lot of note taking and really trying to teach these organizational skills on a daily basis. We're using the computers a lot for that. So if you flip to the next page, you've got what are the problems with our current system? Very high demand for computers in all departments. It's hard to reserve the devices. So I've already reserved devices for May and June for our research paper because we know this is when we do it. You need to program well in advance for all of the 8th graders in the high school, or all the 8th graders here to be doing this at the same time. That means I've now effectively frozen somebody else out who can't use this, and this is a big deal on long-term projects. There are access glitches with students like we talked with log-on, log-off procedures. Kids lose their passwords, they can't remember how to get on. The devices also don't always match student needs. While the iPads might be great in the math department to be using for practice in classroom and working with different types of problem sets, they're not ideal for typing. So for a student might say, I can only get an iPad, that doesn't work for me because today I want to be working on my writing project for this class. So we get the device mismatch. That's not an issue if students have their own devices because they know what they're used to working with. And then finally, there really are insufficient numbers of devices given the number of students and the changes in how we educate kids using technology. Again, this is not replacing direct instruction. This is how we're already using technology as a tool in our classroom. So this little calendar shows you, which you guys have in nice color there, shows you just how heavily these are used. And this was a snapshot at the beginning of the month. So you can see many days, every single period, every single electronic device in this school is being used by one teacher or another. And the other thing that's really tough from a teacher's perspective, I have to go out, I have to get the cart, I have to bring the cart back to me. I have to take the time to send the kids out to the cart, supervise withdrawal and putting back of the devices, get them logged on, get everybody going. And we also change classrooms almost every period. So now I have to switch myself off, move to another classroom, do the same thing. So if this is something that students are able to bring in, it would reduce some of the demands for movement for everything else with the students. So if you go to the next page, we surveyed both students and teachers here at the school. So we have a slight update over what you had. We had 40 staff members complete the survey. Most of those were core curriculum teachers, meaning the foreign language, English, science, social studies, and math teachers. And 40% use computers at least once a week already that they reserve to teach a lesson. So this is not for additional fun stuff. This is to teach the curriculum content that they are doing. 72% of the faculty members surveyed would like to see BYOD for 8th grade students.
we're not talking the sixth graders. We're talking for eighth grade students, second part of fourth quarter now, as practice for going on to the high school, and because we have a lot of things that we are doing at this point in time in the year that require computers, a lot of writing. Benefits, you can see it would free up the computers. It would have fewer tech issues, more time spent on tasks. Teachers do have some concerns though, and the 28% that were concerned about this, most of the concerns were around students that have a device versus students that don't. Teachers also worry about troubleshooting. I might be really good at troubleshooting on a Chromebook. I'm not so hot on an iPad, because if you have students bringing in different devices, you've got to be a little more aware of how to use each of those devices, what works, what doesn't. So those were the main teacher concerns. There were a few about supervision. Mr. Ritako has reassured most of the teachers about the login processes, how we can supervise what kids are doing online with that. So the next page just goes over the basic ways that we use the devices in the classroom. The top two uses for computers in the classroom are for guided research, meaning, for example, in my class, we do a lot of research using the library databases. These are fairly complicated to get to, and students need to be taught how to research. So in class, we do an awful lot of supervised research where we're teaching students how to use the databases, how to find the information that they need, how to gauge reliability of sources, for example. And we do a lot of work on citation. They need to learn how not to plagiarize. They need to learn how to do proper bibliography. The other top use is obviously writing, okay? Lots and lots of writing going on in the classroom. For example, Kevin McIntosh's class, they are writing every single day, most of the period. They really do work a lot on writing here in the classroom. We're also doing a lot more collaborative group work with the writing, the peer editing, teacher feedback, immediate student feedback on things that they're doing, as well as projects ranging from lab reports to presis to presentations. How do students feel about this? We had 115 eighth grade students respond to an optional survey that we did, and we asked them things like, what classes did they use computers in? And they said all of them. All of them they use them in. And that computers are required to complete their homework on most days. Required, not optional, they need to use a computer. The top uses that the students said matched exactly what the teachers said, which was nice, although they didn't say that they used review games as often as teachers said they did. The big kid complaints were obvious. It's slow logins, the computers don't work properly, and there aren't enough computers. We did ask if they had devices, and 90% said they did, that they thought parents might allow them to bring in. 76% said they would prefer to bring their own device to use the school ones. Now, the kids were also very honest, because we asked them what would be benefits and what would be drawbacks. Quite a few of them said, I'm not mature enough to bring in a computer because I will either A, drop it, B, lose it, leave it someplace. There were very few concerns that kids had about theft. They were more concerned about their absent-mindedness at this age, which shows a really nice level of self-recognition in eighth grade. And of course, if we were allowed to do this, they would have to have parental permission. Students would have a set procedure for bringing in a device, having it approved, logging into the system, and they've all signed the acceptable internet use policy as well. So those would be the big things that we've got there. Other things that we've done to research this, we've met with the high school. We met with Mr. Smith last week. We visited Wellesley Middle School, where they have one-to-one with iPads. Some people visited Medfield High School, which is more of a mix. We surveyed our staff and students. We've drafted a parent letter, which you do not have. And we've been coordinating very heavily with Mr. Ritako and the IT staff. So we feel like we've done our homework, like there's a real educational need for this. We would love to be allowed to pilot this. And we can also give feedback on how this works. It would be a very easy comparison to say, this is what has been going on up to this point. We're starting these major projects. And even if we could just do this in social studies and English, we would really have a good basis of comparison for how this works for students that do have devices, how this works for students that do not. So if you have any questions, that's sort of where we're at this point.
A bunch of questions, but my first question is why this is our issue. This is an allowing kids to do something that it doesn't seem as though
we should be in the business of saying they can or they can't. It's their own device, they bring it into school, they use it. Why is this our issue?
Yeah, it wasn't really, that's why the item here isn't, it's not an action required item. We weren't seeking and aren't seeking the permission per se. I don't mean to sound like that, but.
Right, it's
I mean, it feels like it's
informing
like
us.
you wouldn't ask us to bring books to school.
No.
I mean.
Right, but there are some issues. So for instance, at the high school, it's being used.
Right.
And in some English classes, students are strongly being suggested to purchase a book online to read as a method of participating in that class.
Really?
Yes, really.
How the Amazon charges are coming through.
Yes.
Yes.
So the questions for me, that surround this are, one, parents will be asking, what device should my child have? If it's especially if it's their first child in the 8th grade and they're not at this point. If you've got someone in the high school, you're sort of already living this life. So what device? What do I need? Where can I get it? And are there any discounts out there? So, for instance, you can go to the Apple Store and say you're a student at Dover-Sherborn and you get a $50 discount or something. It's, not huge, but it's something. What does this mean for ebooks and books in general? So, from my perspective, it's just that the communication and the letter to the parents addresses those issues, so parents are aware of it, rather than a student coming up to you saying, I need your credit card to buy a book off Amazon. And for teachers, and someone asked me about this the other day, and I said, I remember when our kids were in elementary school, and they would say, oh, do you have a Wii for your child? Do you have, this game, that game? And for me, it's always, it's easy to say yes, it's hard to say no, right? So only do this if you can say, no, put your laptops away, or no, put your iPhone away, or, this is a time to do something else. If we can't do that, because the kids are going to want to do this all the time, we shouldn't be doing it.
But I think that goes to Richard's point, though, that all of that is an administrative issue. And, it's funny because I was just talking to somebody who was saying that Needham is actually now buying laptops for all their incoming 6th graders. Mm-hmm. And, at that point, it's a school committee issue because you have to vote the money. But, and I certainly would not suggest that that's our next action item. But, so I guess my point there is just, I think it's high time that this issue come, as a proposal for our school. That being said, I never like doing something just because everyone else is doing it. And I do want to say that I think you gave an excellent presentation about why educationally the teachers are talking about this, and why, you'd like to move forward on it as a pilot program, So I feel like this was a fantastic explanation of how it could be useful for the 8th graders. But ultimately, I feel like there's not a budget decision here, because we're not buying the laptops. If there are discounts to be had, that's something that Mr. Kellett could talk to different vendors about. Or if there's a particular kind of laptop that the teachers find more useful, that's something they could compile a list of. But I'm not sure that there's a vote for school committee.
There is.
And what is that?
And that is that if it becomes the standard practice to expect kids to bring their own devices, or even to welcome them in large numbers, there may be a liability issue for us when they start to go missing, when they start to break, to fall apart. And I don't know what that liability issue has been in other places that have done this, but I would worry about that.
Do we have that at the high school?
Yeah, I would ask what would be different from the middle school perspective than from the high school that does it 9 through 12.
And that's been embedded in the AUP, so it's in Edwards. It's not a line,
I'm sorry.
It's a parent level?
Supplemental use agreement, it specified the risk is at your, it's at your.
In other words, people sign something that says the school is not liable.
So, and
Can I go back asking some specifics on the way the program's being fielded? So all of the software, all of the tools that they're accessing at this point are web-based?
Yes.
Okay. So logins go away because they already have some type of access on their own machine, and the machine is connecting to the internet over Wi-Fi.
Yes.
Okay. And then is a Chromebook a sufficiently robust enough?
Fantastic.
Okay.
Phenomenal device
So-
and a cheap device.
So we're now down talking about under $200.
Yes, my son's had one for 4 years.
And
4 years, and he just had the first accident with it this past week, and it was self-inflicted. And it cost him $45 to replace the screen that he broke, and that's
Yeah.
coming out of his pocket.
so it's
So-
not, we're not foreseeing purchases of, let's say, a more complicated Windows platform or an Apple
No.
platform to get what they need.
But what are we doing about the people, and we do have people who, for whom that would be an expense?
That would that frees up the devices already here existing in the school system. So for example, any students that don't have a device that they can bring in and use from me, I would have the computer cart signed out, but instead of Wendy Lutz and I monopolizing 2 full carts or more,
Right, you might
we
only
might be
need
down to half a
5,
cart.
yeah.
And I've actually seen it work very well at the high school. John and I in our walkthroughs, we'll be in a science classroom, there'll be a myriad amount of devices, but they're doing some collaborative work, so the 3 of us are working with John's laptop or whatever
Right.
device he has brought. And then I've been in classrooms where it's been fully stocked by BYOD, and then where the educator has supplemented with some of the cuts. So it's this year has, hit the ground running at the high school with BYOD. And I see it as a positive to prepare those students for that environment. Recently just had a conversation with Kevin McIntosh about his use of Google, seeing Gretchen Donahue to see how we bridge that from 8th to 9th. So I see a seamless transition in this pilot.
So it makes sense. To sum up, it's enhancing our educational curriculum. It is, supporting collaborative learning and part of our challenge success. The teachers are going to have more time to actually spend more time with instruction, and all the needs of the students are going to be enhanced because everyone is going to have the access to a computer that they can use.
I would also just point out that, a lot of times we talk about high school as the training ground for college and university, and I would look at this platform also as middle school transition to high school.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We are preparing our kids for what would be expected at that next stage and next step.
So is there anything else we need to do on this?
No, what I'd actually like to do is just, while everything's happening at the school level, I would like to just send the acceptable use policy off to council, to Joan Stein, just to review from a liability perspective, to Richard's point, and just to make sure that the school committee is covered on that front, and that the district is covered. I can take care of that, and just to make sure that the verbiage is what it should be.
Well, also, presumably Medfield or any of the other programs you spoke to probably have already dealt with this and have something that we could also look to as well.
One thing that was nice, when we went to Wellesley, they said they'd had exactly 1 device broken in 2 years. Only 1.
And that was
that was
and
dropped.
they do, they have all 6th grade who has the,
And
But would you-
say,
they have the 6th grade
Oh.
who have, not the 8th grade, they have the 6th grade and they said.
Nearly enough roughhousing in schools.
Well, no, here's the
Well,
thing.
it's usually when they're home and
I
they
know.
drink their iced tea and
My
spill on the
daughter,
keyboard.
when they used school computers in 6th grade, there were a lot of broken computers. The next year, when they had to buy their own, it was remarkable how much better care the kids took of their computers when it was their
A
own
life
money.
lesson right there.
Right, sorry, in the interest of, since we have another meeting that starts in 12 minutes, I just wanna, I don't mean to cut you off, Kevin, I thought it was a great presentation.
That is perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank
well
you.
done.
As always.
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks, Brian. All right, anything else on that? All right. Do you have what you need from us?
We do.
Okay,
Thank you.
All right. The next 2 things, the communication is an ongoing thing, and I keep moving it on our agenda, but I think just the reason it's there is as I look to next year, as we all look to next year, and we think about streamlining meetings and doing things more efficiently and effectively, I think there's an opportunity for us to communicate better. I think we get so many great updates from you, from the students, from everything, that we should be able to better leverage technology to get out to our constituents without having to convene all the people around the table everyone. So whether that's taking advantage of YouTube clips of students giving updates so that they don't have to come on a Tuesday night, and there seems like there should be a more efficient way of getting our constituents updated that I'd love to work on. So if you love communication, feel free to.
And have some spare time.
Spare time. So that's what I'm doing. All right. That's my point on communication. Naming.
Naming opportunities, so we do not have a policy on naming opportunities, and there are times when there's a desire to name things after people, whether it's teachers who've been here a long time and they're retiring, whether it's and we just would like to see if perhaps the policy subcommittee would like to maybe take that. Claire.
Would
I'm not giving you homework, but,
Sure.
or if it's something that the school committee even feels needs to be codified in policy.
Do we have a request? Is that why we're?
We do. We do have a request before us for a naming opportunity around the retiring.
Don't you remember that was the email that got kicked around that we all politely ignored?
I do.
And it didn't happen?
Yeah. It just a lot of things have happened since then. I wasn't sure everyone knew that or it was just me.
Well, I think, and also financial. I think that it will quickly morph into a discussion around advertising and sponsorship. Advertising, sponsorship is probably the better word.
So maybe policy committee, subcommittee can just gather some information and lay out alternatives, get some feedback.
Great.
Do you think?
I know that people have what?
That timing's probably not quick enough for you.
Well, no, we have. I
For
mean,
the-
I
for the
think we have
request.
time We need, but I've pulled some policies on different on it's more on advertising that's been done in area schools. So school districts that put up a certain kind of banner around the baseball field, softball field, whatever it is. I've pulled some area policies on that, which is clearly the monetary.
And I know there's been, in the last 2 years, stuff on the MASC listserv on this exact topic.
So we could probably pull something from MASC, but it does seem like I haven't been able to find a policy on naming specifically without it having a monetary and therefore kind of advertising that.
So this was done 4 years ago at Pines Hill. With the.
Well, we named the Norris Searle Field.
Well, we've done it here, the gymnasium.
Yeah.
The Norris Searle Field.
So those, those activities have happened in the past without forethought.
Without policy.
Well, I'm just curious, the Sherborn School Committee addressed this when they renamed, I wish I could remember her name.
What did they
The
rename?
music teacher. The
Sarah.
multi-purpose room.
Oh, yes.
Oh, that has a name now.
Yeah. It happened when your child was.
We just did it with.
Oh,
No,
in Thomas.
Yeah, we need a policy and if you guys can put together.
All right, Steve. All right, Steve, we have to meet.
This is intended to be a school committee coordinated, accepted policy.
And that's true, is it
I think it's
three
gotta
school
be.
committee?
Yes.
Yes.
It would.
Yeah,
Correct, okay, all right,
it's Dawn, Ann, and myself.
okay, great. Add that to your list.
Yes.
Well, Claire, I can send the person who handles policy at MASC, Jim.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, consent agenda. We have 4 things on the consent agenda. Hopefully you've had a chance to take a look at them. The regional school committee meeting minutes of the 11th of February, as well as March 3rd. The donation acceptance from the Friends of Dover-Sherborn High School indoor track in the amount of $5,000 and something.
801 and 60 cents.
$801. A $20,000 donation anonymous to Challenge Success that requires our acceptance, and finally an anonymous donation to the middle school music program for $500 that is also anonymously donated. So those are the 4 things in front of us. 5? Yes.
Yeah, I want to hold the challenge success one for
Hold the Challenge
discussion.
Success. Okay. Anything else on the other ones? Okay. quick question that we should do before, and then
No,
you'd like
not
more
really.
information?
It's
Oh, you want- Okay, so now let's take a motion on everything except for the challenge success donation.
So moved.
All right, second. All right, any more discussion? No, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous. So pulling out the donation acceptance on challenge success. Richard?
That's an extraordinary amount of money, and of course, one thing to say is thanks. But it's an extraordinary amount of money, and I think it raises a question in a way that the others don't. How will it be spent? Who's going to decide how it's going to be spent? What's the approval process? What's the submittal process for that?
John, do you know what the intent from Ellen was?
Yeah, well, so we have a challenge success team. Those were the members who went to Stanford University, and then Ellen and Pam Webb oversee the challenge success team. So the funds for that were going to be used to pay for one of the keynote speakers who we did have come out, who would like to have come out again for faculty as well as for another group of parents. It would also enable us perhaps to bring in a couple of additional programs that we would have to pay for. So it's speakers and additional programs.
And who's overseeing the budget and approval of expenses?
Myself, Ellen Shagnon, and Pam Wright.
So this would be.
And
And this is incremental spending then?
Yes, but the one, for instance, the speaker engagement is, I think, $8,000 or $9,000
Say Foghorn.
for this one particular speaker. So, and it was actually after the speaker we just had that a parent came forward and said, "I'm so moved by what, and I think that this would be great for my kids and great for all kids, and I've come into this and I want to make sure this program is supported." We wouldn't have been able to have that speaker next year, obviously, at that cost. It happened this year because our original, our Stanford coach had a complication, which I think all is well with she and the baby, but we were able to get Ms. Pope here to speak in person, but that wouldn't typically be possible otherwise.
No, all of this sounds great, but obviously, it's critically important when you start putting that amount of money on the table that there really be transparency and accountability. And I just want to make sure that that's in place rather than sort of, getting 6 months down the road and saying,
Got it. So actually, in budget sense, there's a donation fund, and then there are a bunch of sub accounts set up. This will be earmarked in its own sub account. Be able to run a report anytime on exactly this 20. What happens is tomorrow morning we go in, we immediately send to Heidi Perkins an email indicating your favorable vote, assuming there is one around the donation. She then within 48 hours sets up that account, and then all the transactions are in and out against that amount of money.
And
So
we're
it's
signing off on money in and out of accounts on the warrants, Richard. We're seeing the end of the trail.
All right. I just want to make sure that those issues are on the table. And that's fine, we can stop talking about it. It's extraordinarily generous, and
It's unbelievable.
it would be great to hear, some progress reports about that, how the money is being spent and the value.
It's not unlike the Metro's healthcare grant that's run with,
Expand, yes, yep.
My brain freeze, grandmother, that has that oversight, and actually I oversee it with them and Heidi Perkins, so there is a system of checks and balances.
She seemed very scarred by all our snow. Do you think she'll come back?
Are we all scared?
No, she 5 times in the presentation made a reference
At
to
least
it.
5.
I move we accept this
Okay.
donation.
Okay, so we have a motion to accept, second, any more discussion? All those in favor? Okay, absolutely, huge thank you to our.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Assume you know.
No, it will be hard. Okay, so for our review, we have Sherborn Community, School Committee meeting minutes in our packet, along with Dover School Committee meeting packets. If you have anything for the May regional meeting, please send them our way. And obviously anything for joint meetings over the next few weeks. Any other business for this meeting before we adjourn for our next meeting? Okay, seeing none,
Thank you.
I declare adjourned. 30 seconds to spare before 8:15.
Where is everybody?